welcome to another episode of Insurtech Unscripted. This is Ali Safavi. I'm here together with Parker Beauchamp, my dear friend. He's also an investor in COVU. That's how we got to know each other. Really enjoyed kind of like working with Parker over the past year, I would say, or so. And he definitely has a lot of interesting insights and unique insights because of his background and how he got started as an investor. So I'll let him talk a little bit more about his background. So Parker, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Number two, I understand. I don't have a great background. I won't do a great job with it. I'll just tell you that I've always been very interested by insurance. My mom and dad were both names at Lloyd's of London. And I get to go on Lloyd's trips when I was a little kid, hang out with the broker families that they knew, and ride the escalators, what at the time was the new Lloyd's building. I was just totally obsessed with insurance, and I can't explain why, even to this day. I read all the insurance books I could find. I'd ask them to send me on insurance internship when I was a teenager, and I'd go live in little towns where insurance companies existed. I'd work in new departments every couple of weeks and try to learn about that business. I was in a great big hurry, rushed through college and graduate school and took an insurance sales job for I don't even know what it was, few $1,000s, borrowed my grandmother's car, lived in a little, I thought like a fishing cabin, and drove that car everywhere and distributed insurance online in all 50 states throughout the early 2000s, kind of lived through that whole hack evolution. You could get a pay-per-click for a nickel for insurance. And did a lot of cool work in new insurtech was a thing in the late 90s. At one of those insurance experiences, these medium husky white guys would come and read policies to the underwriter trainees, and I couldn't understand why they were reading them. They were right there in front of them, and then they would go and recopy the policy in their own handwriting. And I was just thinking, y'all have heard of the internet, right? This is going away in a couple of years. And that was 24 years ago this summer. And so I tried to push that as hard as I could. Lived in a variety of various insurtechs and concepts before these things really even had names, which are popular today. I ended up acquiring that distribution company, and then later kind of fell into an exit. But it was great. And then, thought about what to do next. I really enjoyed my time working with insurtechs on ideation and formation and strategy. And I did everything back then with those companies except for give them an investment. And so with this iteration of my life, I thought, I want those guys to win. I want the space to thrive, not just insurtech, but insurance. I think the world's a better place with insurance in it. And just keep rolling. But this time make significant investments in people that are meaningful and hope to go do great, big, impactful work inside the space for the consumers of the space. So pretty dull, right?
I mean, so the company that you had that you kind of sold, I believe, right? It's called InGuard, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
InGuard,
right? And then now your current venture fund is called Marked Ventures, which you have multiple LPs, a lot of it comes from your own capital. And you're very focused on broker tech and agency tech, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's an important space, right? Understanding how the way things work and how insurance gets distributed. It's like a completely distributed market and vast and very complicated. And, I think in early days of insurtech, a lot of people skipped over those and, teased agents and brokers, et cetera. But those are important people to the process. And those are who clients choose many times. I mean, they have all the money, they have all the, they have the market, they have the know-how. But for a variety of reasons, I think that they were behind in some things, but I have no doubt that, the incumbent's an important part of the process today and always will be. And I think you see companies like yours that are starting to innovate around them and be more helpful than disruptive. And that goes for many spaces in insurance and insurtech. It's a great big thing. It's probably going to be hard to eat it all. So, how do we be helpful and iterative to try to evolve, the industry?
Yeah, so again, the reason I find your background interesting is because you're one of the only, I would say, agent or agency owners turned investors that I know of. And you actually have a venture fund. It's not just family office that you invest, and it's a decent size, I would say, especially for the insurtech space. So I find it very interesting and a very unique kind of experience, because when you're looking at startups, and even when we kind of spoke to you, you weren't coming at it with a thesis, you were coming at it with your own problems. You kind of knew what
this.
Yeah, you've done this. You've been in it, and not that long ago, and you still are involved in some operating capacities as well. So you kind of know the problems. It's not just a thesis, and you kind of bring interesting insights there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. When people bring ideas to me to solve problems, I can like quickly decide if they were a problem or not. Like, oh yeah, that was awful, or I remember that. That was just a terrible thing. Should have happened 15 years ago. Why has it not happened? How can we make it happen? And then many times you get ideas where you can be helpful to the founder. Like, I'm not sure that's as big of a problem as you think that it may be, but let's go do some homework. I can introduce you to some people and we can go find out, because I'm not positive that I'm right. And then have them go do that. And there may be some twisting or changing or like puzzle piece moving to try to make what they're trying to do a little bit stronger. And then maybe there's a way I can support them financially.
Let's go to this. This is one of my favorite questions to ask anyone. It's, what is your unpopular opinion or controversial thesis that you feel like not everyone might agree with you? Especially, I think a lot of people have got the agency space wrong, or like the distribution space wrong. So what do you think is?
Absolutely. I think that's known. I think that's generally accepted today, that people miss that. It's funny how spaces or buzzwords or terms kind of go in the space. We could like replay a lot of those. One I see happening all the time or used all the time is embedded. I mean, I think embedded is a term that we talk about constantly. Makes a ton of sense. 2 + 2 is 10, or whatever the math is. Monetization, value add, stickiness, retention, all those things make sense. But I'll tell you, it's a lot harder work than people think. Like, those are usually like belly to belly sales, one-to-one, very difficult things to do with great big companies that have development teams that change and turnover and leadership changes. It's a tough space. I pushed that for a very long time, probably more than 10 years ago. And it was always difficult. But I do think that, I don't know if this would be controversial, but I do think that one of the great plays for agents and brokers is to be the actual distribution partners of the embedded play itself. They probably already insure those companies. They probably already have a trusting relationship. They know how they work, versus pure play, new school, embedded plays that are trying to go do direct sales. So I do think that a controversial, harder than you think, maybe not as high as you think, even though I agree that it makes a ton of sense. But I would like to see an iteration where the agents and the brokers are actually the distribution partners of the embedded plays themselves. They probably don't have the technology, but I know that there's an embedded partner out there that could bring them the technology for where they can go do the deals with their friends and clients in their communities.
I think that makes sense. It's interesting. On the other episodes of this podcast, we kind of somehow come back to embedded. As you said, it's a very hot topic, especially 2022. I think a lot of people called it the year of embedded, which I don't think it was as a year of embedded, as people say.
It's going on for a long time, 100 years, probably, but yeah, it's talked about a lot.
I think Costos, my co-founder, like, he had a way of saying it is like, look, embedded is growing. It's an interesting market, but when I think about the entire insurance distribution, it's still a very small chunk of the entire market.
Yeah.
It's going to grow to, I mean, it could slowly grow more and more, but people take it a little bit lightly. And I think the model that you described in, which is you get leads through embedded channels, but then the conversion happens with a human in the loop, makes a ton of sense, because I think for most insurance products, it's just going to be very hard to sell without a human touch or a human component or a human push.
Right. Or the humans get the partnership built, and then from tech from there on out. There could be a lot of ways that it could work, but to get into those companies cold and to hold the relationship long enough to develop the lead generation over time and have it be growing is a great big hard thing.
So in your agency, what were the primary lines or primary things that you had? Like, for example, did you do an embedded play, and what lines were you guys more in?
All the time we were working on embedded plays. Yeah, and they could be very simple. They could be various affiliate programs, or they could be with great big companies too. Of course, I was always trying to work on the great big companies, and those hit with various success. Sometimes not, or sometimes you get sick of it and it fizzles out a little bit. But I always felt like if you were going to develop a partnership, it'd be better to develop a partnership that could bring many clients than versus just doing a deal with a client. And so I always felt like some form of embedded or affiliation deal was better because you don't kick out a lot of deals for maybe the same work, maybe a little more work, but not proportionally more work, not one-to-one.
What were the key learnings you had from those? Like, what are the things that you feel?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
What's hard about it?
Absolutely.
Is it closing a partner that is hard, or is it converting those deals that is?
I think it's the partner that's hard. It's hard to get into the companies. It's hard to hold their attention. People change positions. It's hard to control leadership. They're already doing a thing, right? And so they're adding something to it. And many times it's very easy for them to lose focus on the addition by just focusing on the thing that they do. And I think that's what makes it tough. And these are long-term things. And so, not going to tangent with embedded, but I think that's what's tough is like you're doing a partnership with a company that you hope lasts a very long time and is mutually successful and better for the consumer. But, it's difficult. It's hard to hold the attention, hard to get in, hard to get going, hard to miss all the roadblocks, and, hard to monetize.
Let's imagine you get in and you kind of figure out a partnership model, but do you think, how difficult is it to actually convert those leads? Is that difficult as well, or no? Like, generally, you get good leads and it's easy to convert them.
Well, I think the experience in any partnership could be different, but I think that once you're converting leads, it's always tough in the very beginning, right? It takes a little extra, human power to make sure that everything goes well, and you're working through the problems and making sure the user experience is a good one. And then after that, I think it moves into more of a place where deals are happening and it's going well. Yet, how do you continue to feed it? How do you continue to make sure that it's got people's attention? How do you continue to evolve it rather than just, milk it? I think it's got a life cycle. Each one of those partnerships has a life cycle of its own. It needs properly nourished and developed and, cared for, just like anything.
So now let's imagine we're 20 years from now, or like whatever the future horizon is for you. Do you see embedded a big part of the future, or what is the picture that you have for the future of distribution or insurance as a whole?
I think it'll be a part of the future. I don't think that there'll be any one thing in the future. Like I said, it's a great, big, diverse marketplace. It's very complicated and serves a lot of segments around the world. And so I don't think there's an end-all be-all for any of this, but is embedded a part of that? I would imagine so, most definitely.
Like a big part, or like a small part? Like I want to see like how, like for example, when you think about the agency market, the distribution market, the captive independent market, the direct market, how big is embedded, you think, compared to the rest?
I think it's bigger than it is today, but I don't think it's bigger than any of those other things, unless pushed by those things.
So you think like the future is going to be more dominated by a hybrid model of, I don't know, like an independent agency meets embedded and kind of like together works on just a better customer experience or whatever?
It's going to keep going. But I don't think there's an end-all be-all for any of these things. I think that, probably things that offer technology that consumers want to consume and interact with are probably going to have a bigger and bigger role in the process in 20 years from now. But I'll tell you, in 1999, I thought because of the internet, all this was going away in a couple of years. And here we are 24 years later this summer, and we're still just barely chipping away at it. So if I flash forward another 20 years, is it a bigger jump than we made in the last 20? I would suspect. But Is it night and day? I can't imagine that it's earth-shattering necessarily. I mean, insurance has evolved for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands, depending upon how you keep track of your insurance
What do
history.
you find insurance? Yeah.
But it's always going to be evolving. It's going to be going. This isn't a flash in the pan. It's just going to keep evolving and getting better and better and better. And so I don't think that there's like an on-off moment or a line in the sand where there's point of no return. I think it's just going to continually evolve and get better and more thoughtful and better for consumers and all the parties that play.
What do we think better is? Like, what is better in 20 years? Like, does that mean new products? Does it mean like risk management? Does that mean is insurance definition? Like, what is better?
I think if we want to be dreamers here, insurance can come up with a way for bad things never to happen to people, right? Like, I think the goal is like, hey, let's make sure that the bad thing doesn't happen. And that's very tough and very unlikely. And so when the bad things happen, to make sure that they get back to the way that they were as quickly and as pleasant of an experience as possible. So I think that like those are the overarching things. So is that like prevent bad stuff from happening, and when it does, that it is pleasant, people get back to where they were, people, organizations, things, casualty lines, as well as they can be. I think you're just going to constantly work on it. And as far as new products and new risk management techniques, I mean, the world's changing, right? Like, open up a reinsurance trade magazine. Like, it's a big deal. Like, these climate's a big deal. Cyber's a big deal.
Me and you were in agreement that the ideal future is managing people's risk, from what I understand, which is we help prevent bad stuff from happening. But if it happens, we want to make sure we can make them whole again. But we make them whole. We don't just give them a check. Like, we actually help solve the problem.
Right.
That's the ideal world.
Right. It was good.
I am a little bit more optimistic about the timeline of getting there. I don't think it's going to be perfect, mainly because that's why I started COVU, at least. I mean, I think I'm thinking about it that way, and we have a plan of how to get there. Is like, what are the ways that we could do? And I think we also underestimating like a lot of the technology that exists now that would allow us to kind of like help the prevention and mitigation and all that. And then that's why I keep saying, like, it all starts with a trusted relationship with the customer. So if we could build trust with them and they would listen to us to make the decisions around the risk and insurance, we might be able to convince them to let us manage the risk for them through all these mitigation and making whole and all these other strategies, which obviously is a dream, as you said, and this is what we're trying to build towards, but obviously it's a long play. Just to go a little bit more into area that I know you obviously are very involved with, it's kind of like the agency space. Let's start with painting a picture. What is the state of the market today? Let me start with this, actually, like a big question that a lot of people ask. What do you think the future is going to be, and how big are independent agents be thinking in the future?
I think independent agents and brokers are going to be a big deal, indefinitely.
Like 50% of the market, more or less?
Oh, I don't know from a percentage standpoint. I
think
I don't know that it will change
grow
a great deal. I think the market's going to shrink and grow. I think certain areas are going to get bigger, certain areas are going to get smaller. Some will get consumed by, the other distribution points that you talked about, like captives or direct players, et cetera, depending upon the line of business. But other areas are going to grow. It's going to get more difficult. Premiums are going to have to increase probably in many cases. And maybe those are controlled by independent agents, brokers. But the future is a long time, so I don't know what your horizon is, but I think it's going to be a big deal. And there'll be new entrants all the time. But I think independence is a thing. Like, the ability to represent your client with your client's interest, and work with a variety of balance sheets to try to protect them is going to be a thing. Like, that just makes a ton of sense. I think in the end, the independence is a winner here.
So when you think about the agency space, a few things that are interesting. One is there are 40,000 independent agencies now compared to 36,000 2 years ago, which means there's more independent agencies. At the same time, you look at the M&A activity, there's more M&A also happening in the space. So it means like there's a lot more acquisition, and at the same time, a lot of the captive agency forces. It sounds like there's some pushes or momentum towards moving into an IA model versus a captive model. That is also happening at the same time. So there's like a little bit of change, but as you said, I think independent PNC is growing, direct is growing a little bit, and it's kind of happening at the same time. And the pie is growing as a whole.
Yeah.
But why do you think the PEs are disinvolved right now in this space? Do you think it just has to do with like the whole cash flow model of these agencies, or anything else that is drawing them into the space? Because there's a lot of PEs buying our agencies now.
Oh, absolutely, and have for a long time, and probably will continue to. I mean, I think it just goes to show you that it's a great business. Usually it's a very sticky client base. I think that being able to factor the money, so to speak, to make sure that you could have a return is good. Economies are good. The ability to grow and provide more shared services and resources for clients is important. Again, the market's not necessarily shrinking, right? Like you said, there's still more agencies all the time, which many could be insurtechs. But if you think about some of those organizations, the great big organizations, the publics, there's all kinds of insurance talent throughout all of those. And it's very easy, low barriers to start a new agency. I think you have people continue to start agencies all the time.
And do you think these PEs are actually providing customer value as well? Because I'm thinking from a customer centricity perspective. How good or bad is this consolidation, the PE model of consolidation?
I personally think that it could be better, quite honestly. I mean, if you move from an organization of like 30 or 40 people to an organization of 3,000 or 4,000 people, maybe you're 100 million premium to 10 billion premium, and all the internal and external resources and carrier resources and knowledge and know-how. It's not for everybody, but I do not think that detracts from a consumer's best interest. In many cases, it's an improvement.
Because the narrative that I'm seeing also, like, again, you have more experience than I do, is that, like, let's say a 5 million GWP book, it's the agent is involved with their customers, have a personal relationship, then they sell to a PE or, whatever, that it's just massive. And the customers become like, 1,000 customers out of hundreds of thousands. And the agent also leaves after like a year or 2 years or whatever they have to stay. So they don't care much more about the business anymore, because their incentive to cashed out. So, and a lot of the PEs are not really good at kind of like the back office services or technology or kind of any kind of value add. So I'm like, the personalization is gone. The resources are a little bit more, but at the same time, like they're not like, that's not their core competency. Like the main thing is just to kind of retain, like the metrics was all about aggregation. It's nothing to do with the customer experience.
Right. Yeah. Personal more than commercial. I mean, those are different. All of these are different things. There are a lot of these out there, and there's good ones and there's bad ones. And every line or segment or department of those businesses could be looked at differently. And I think that, the situation that you described could be very prevalent in a number of these. Yeah. In others, I think, I'd share that, like, it could be partner driven. Like, these principals are staying in and they're staying deeply involved with their clients, and they're finding new wins and improvements for their clients, and coming up with better ideas because they have more exposure to better ideas. And so and many times it takes away a lot of distractions and a lot of pressures at that agency level to be a part of something while still independent. They're not alone. And I think that they may feel more protected in a group than they did when it was just them, and maybe getting bullied by carriers or other partners, or sky's the limit there. So I think it's spectrum, right? There's good ones and there's bad ones, but I personally believe that you wouldn't do that unless you thought it was going to be better. And while it takes time, some of these aggregators close on 100 transactions a year to sort of bring all those cultures together and unify everything. is a lot of hard work, and it can get better. But it does not mean that then, the total distribution force by count gets smaller, because I think there's agencies all the time that are starting up, or people that no longer want to work for the publics, and they've got clients and then go get clients. And there's technologies like your companies available to them to bring a lot of these resources to them to start something that's not very difficult to start even easier. So, I mean, I'm long on the distribution space. I think it's gone this way for a long time, and it'll probably go like this for a very long time too.
So, as someone who spends a lot of time on the distribution space, what do you? Let's make it a little bit more specific. What is the state of mind for insurance agencies today? What are the biggest problems, challenges, concerns, risks that you see for the agencies or potential distribution as a whole?
If you're an agent or a broker, or you're thinking about becoming one and starting one, then I mean, I think reputation is by far your biggest exposure, right? Like deep down, probably most of those people want to be protectors, want to be little superheroes, and always have the claim work out perfectly, and the coverage is never wrong, and we always had enough coverage and limit, and we never charged too much, and the experience was amazing. Of course, it never goes that way. And so I think when you're in that space, you just want to have a great reputation. And I think that's probably everybody's biggest risk, personally. As far as all the other things, of course, those are all there too. But I think at the end of the day, it's a service business, and people have to have a great reputation in order to be hired to represent those needs.
Yeah, because also one of the things that I like, based on a lot of the surveys that I've seen and a lot of the customers that we talk to, is hiring. There seems to be like a massive talent shortage going on in the agency space as well. I think the last number I saw was like 50% almost of agencies reported number one problem they're dealing with is just finding staff or talent in the back end.
I think if you went back in time, it's the same problem. It's like everybody's 60, right? We can't find people. People aren't good enough. I think if you back up 20 years and another 20 years and another 20 years, they're all talking about the same thing. So I think that, is it a problem generally? I don't know that it's a problem. It's probably a challenge, but I think, the top flight organizations and leadership are solving for that, right? And everybody else is, not their problem. You mentioned technology. Technology gets better and better. Education gets better and better. There's not a single answer.
Because I think you're thinking about the bigger agencies, because 85% of the market are small to medium-sized agencies where there's like one producer or two or three maybe producers, and the agent is the one who has to figure all of it out. Like, I mean, if you're talking about a big company, then you have management focus on hiring, but like for the bulk of the market, I would assume the producer has to sell, has to service, has to hire, has to do that. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of the problem of like, I'm just understaffed and overwhelmed, and I need to kind of figure out how to do stuff efficiently and hire people.
And I would just say that I think that that's always been the problem, right? You go to an industry thing 20 years ago and they were talking about the same thing. So I think, again, companies like yours are, and there's a variety of others out there that are going to continue to help solve for this. And I think this space will develop and get better. I don't disagree that these are challenges, but they're not insurmountable. I think every company in the world deals with people. Do we have enough of them? Can we afford them? Are we doing as much as we can with them? Are they happy? Are they longtime partners?
So what do you think the biggest opportunities are in the distribution or agency space?
Biggest opportunity for the agents and the brokers themselves, the principals, the clients.
So I want to start a company, or I want to invest in kind of the space. I want to see, like, in your opinion, like looking at the space and obviously your experience with distribution, what do you think is some of the biggest opportunities? That could be solving a problem for the agents. That could be replacing the agents if you think that's a big opportunity.
What do you I don't think they're going to replace the agents. I think the biggest opportunity is or the technologies that exist today for agents to consume that technology and be a better service provider to their customers. I think that that's probably the most exciting space. Like all these things that you dreamed of having 10 or 15 years ago are now here or soon to be here or could be had here. You know, it's not pie in the sky stuff anymore. It used to be so far off that if I only had this or I could do these following things, all those things now, for the most part, are available to you. Agree, it's a little disjointed and maybe not one partner can solve for all those things. Tech-enabled agencies and workforces and producers are a thing.
Let's go a little bit more specific. Like, one, do you think agencies are good at adopting technology? Because my experience with them is that like there's too many little tools out there.
There have to be bigger and better platforms that do more things, in my opinion. You have to have a trusted partner on those.
And you have a lot of AMSs out there, agency management systems, but there sounds to still a lot of opportunities. So like, because when we said take enable, like take to enable what exactly? Like what are the pieces or specific ideas or opportunities that you think are the biggest potential?
Well, I think it'd be very easy to be incredibly critical of the agency management systems, right? Like this is where that innovation should have been happening all the time. And it has not, and it is not. And so you're seeing all these, venture-backed Insurtechs starting up that are doing little pieces of the things that they should have been doing all along.
Let me rephrase that. I want to make sure I understand correctly. You're saying that they're either gonna work with a partner, which could be like a roll-up play, like to sell their agency, and the partner is going to figure out how to make them tech-enabled. Or the solution is like an all-in-one platform, which again is a partner, but it's like an all-in-one solution to do kind of figure. So it has to be jointed and it has to be complete, and that probably is going to be achieved through a partner that they have to like work with, which is partners typically are people who buy them out, from what I understand.
It could be either of those things, and both could provide the platform and the technology necessary to keep up with the future. Meanwhile, I think that people continue to wait around on AMSs and the like to do it, and it's just not happening fast enough, and never has. I think that in the meantime, there are these opportunities for companies like yours to, solve for those needs and, do a lot of good.
This is why we did COVU the way that we're doing it now, because what we learned working with these agencies is that technology alone is not enough. And most technologies are just a piece of the puzzle. Like if a customer calls in, you can't get a technology just to like magically solve it if the customer is, expecting to talk to someone. So that's why we had to like take on a lot of the back office operation and then leverage technology with a joint ecosystem. Like it can't be disjointed, as you said, with an all-in-one solution to be able to like just digitalize the entire stack, but kind of in a tech-enabled fashion more than just completely replacing humans. Because I feel like it's just almost impossible at this stage because most customers don't want to talk.
Yeah, or when it's scary or hard or difficult or those things fail, like there's people involved. And again, think of all the thousands of carriers in the United States and all the millions of consumers of insurance. There's just not one thing that grabs all that and fixes all that and solves for people totally. So
it's like a technology partnership model makes a lot of sense. I 100% agree with you. I feel like it needs to be like a partner, technology focused,
hybrid, a little bit of both, or organizations like yours that are a hybrid of that and solving for that. And
I don't think like a carrier X is going to go to an IA that works with 10 carriers and just digitalize the whole thing. Like my experience with has been.
But carriers are important. In order for like a carrier has to interact with whatever that tech stack looks like.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh no, integration is a different.
And if they don't, then you're pushing it. It's got to be pushed both ways.
Oh yeah, you have to build pipelines. I agree.
Right, and if agencies knew what transactions with which carriers done by which people cost what, then it would be a remarkable thing, right? Like you just have to accept that some carriers are more expensive for the agency to do business with than others. Some are piece cake, some are, and it may be very difficult to see because it's hard to measure.
And you think agencies actually care?
And like, I think I absolutely
actually
they care. Like these are, these are good businesses and sharp people that care and care about their customers. And nobody wants to run a bad agency. everybody wants to have a great agency. And so, I think it's they are the incumbent. They are tenacious. They want to win and have great reputations. And so they're going to seek these technologies and partners and solutions on all aspects of their business so that they can keep winning.
2 questions, but quick. One, what was the biggest kind of lesson learned or insight you picked up in 2022, you think? Like something that you felt like initially you got wrong, or something that you just picked up on the way? It's like, oh, that was interesting.
We didn't make any mistakes in 22. Kidding, of course.
It doesn't have to be a mistake. It could be just like an insight you picked up by looking at someone else made a mistake, or just something I feel like it was interesting to learn in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people with the on the venture side, with the changing climate, so to speak, just like an adjustment here. I think that I knew this, so it wasn't a takeaway, but I think it was confirmed throughout the year. Like, hey, the space is going to roll. Like, trains left the station. Insurance is involved. Innovated for very, very long time. We'll continue to innovate. And these little ebbs and flows and market conditions come and go. And I don't think that there's ever been a better time to be a founder, or to be an investor, or to be working in insurance. And I think that at the end of 22, that's what I thought it was going to be. I think it was. And I think that 2023, yes, of course, we'll have challenges like any given year. But, things are going to continue to roll. And I think it's going to get better and better and better.
So you think it's going to be the best year yet to start a company for Insurtech?
I mean, you can't start one last year. You can't start one next year. So if you're going to start one, I'd start one now, personally.
And what are you looking forward to in 2023? Like, what's the, something that you anticipate coming up, or something you don't look forward to?
No, I'm looking forward to, I think, just more of everything. There's going to be winners and losers in every given year. And so I think just going to go for it, like always.
Very good. Parker, thank you so much. This was a fun chat. I appreciate making time.
Yeah, man.